Hi, welcome. It's episode 148 of Grow Yourself Up, and I'm delighted to be with you today. Today, we're going to talk about our own humanity and the paradox of healing. And we're going to be moving into some episodes about attachment, secure attachment, unsecure attachment, and talking about all these different things and how they relate to regulation and how important our own attachment to ourselves is in our parenting and indeed in our life. First of all, I want to ask you, if you are finding this podcast supportive, please can you leave a review? So you can leave a review on Spotify, and you can also leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. I'd really, really appreciate it if you find it useful, and if you have capacity and you're able to, that you could leave a review. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to talk about attachment and some of the key features of attachment, but not today. But I want to kind of give you a kind of an overall view of what it means when we're actually on a healing journey, and what it means in terms of ourself and what we can expect for how we feel. So often there's a sense when we on a, if you want to call it a healing journey or recovering journey or reclamation of self, there's a sense that it's all going to be like rainbows and joyful, and we're going to feel, I always had the sense that I would like turn into some sort of Mother Teresa figure, where I'd have like no bad feelings, and I'd be like really like holier than thou in some sense, and kind of I'd be approaching perfect, which I know sounds ridiculous, but that's actually the opposite of what healing is, because many of us, because of the way we were raised and because of generational patterns and societal messages, we're like a square shape, and we've been squashed into something like, say, a smaller circle shape. So we've had to cut off some bits of us, disavow them, dissociate from them, disconnect. We've had to squash ourselves and not be our real, full human selves because of what we learned was not acceptable in childhood. And so reclaiming ourselves, reconnecting, healing, however you want to language it, is actually about getting getting back in touch with all those parts. So it's a kind of a spreading out. It's an integrating. It's a becoming more messy, actually, which I know sounds kind of counterintuitive, because you might imagine you're going to get kind of neater and actually no, we're looking to welcome in our humanity, because the essence of the shame that many of us have experienced, so the shame core that we've got, is that we've been shamed for our humanity. So in childhood, we've been shamed for our big emotions. We've been left alone in our pain. We've been left alone when we're crying. We've been left alone in things that are messy. We haven't received adequate emotional support. We haven't been witnessed in our sadness. We haven't been witnessed in our grief. We just haven't been witnessed as ourselves as people. And so we have these coping mechanisms. So perfectionism is one of the most common coping strategies, where we just imagine that we need to be like emotionally neat. We don't connect to our feelings. We may use over-exercising or food restriction or overworking or overgiving. All of these ways in which we constantly look outside of ourselves and look to external markers. So, i.e., how thin am I? How good am I at work? How good am I at helping people? How big is my bonus? All of these external markers to imagine that they will keep us safe. And so when we are recovering from that, we're kind of stepping away from this perfectionism. It can be very, very discombobulating, because first of all, we are moving away from external markers. So we're moving away from our locus of control being externally focused, and we're coming back to ourselves. We're coming home, that reclamation to ourselves. And we don't have any of these external markers anymore. And we're then left with our internal world. So with many of these coping strategies, perfectionism, controlling things, people pleasing, trying to always focus on what other people need, we're actually outside of our own emotional experience. So we are coming back to our own emotional experience. And that can feel like so jarring, because suddenly you are in this emotional landscape. It might have been very flat because you have experienced emotional neglect, and now you're kind of you're getting to know this emotional landscape, which isn't actually flat. It just has been flat because you've been repressing and suppressing and denying things so much, or displacing them. There's all different psychological strategies we learn to block our emotions. And indeed, we may have really had to dull our interoception because we didn't have parents who could tend to us. So there might be a process of kind of recalibrating our own attention to self and learning to notice our body signals. Because for example, if we had to dull our hunger signals or dull our, babies are, vital and energetic, and they move. And if we learn, even in the womb, we might learn that it's not good for us to move too much. If we have if our mother freezes a lot, say, in pregnancy, we might have this experience of, I better kind of conserve energy. I mustn't move too much. It's not wise as an organism and an embryo to move too much. And so we have to learn to come back into contact with these body signals and respond in ways that are appropriate for us. And so I wanted to do this sort of kind of context-giving episode, I guess, because someone wrote to me the other day and they asked about, they had recently started a certain type of therapy, and they were feeling much worse, and they were kind of confused about that. And why were things kind of not immediately improving? And this year, in my own journey, so in 24 and 25, I've also really deepened into another layer of my own healing, and peeled back more of the layers of the healing onion. And that has meant that I have been in touch with a lot more pain as well. I've been kind of deepening into some of my experiences and being able to metabolize more pain and really get in touch with some like very young parts and everything. And that can be very, very discombobulating because it feels like, hang on, I'm like doing all this healing. Why do I not feel like emotionally sunny all the time? But welcoming in our humanity means actually, and as we kind of heal and grow, that we are going to feel more. And as we make space for more joy, so I consciously cultivate joy and do things that I find lovely and relaxing and resourcing, I cultivate that purposefully and cultivate contentment and happiness and a connection with friends. But as that happens, and as we get more regulation in our system, we actually have more capacity to touch into the profound terror, the profound despair, the horror, the sadness that many of us have held in our systems for many years, either from early on in our own childhood, perhaps from our prenatal experiences, and even from generational trauma. And so I have really been connected to different versions of my own inner child as I've got more regulation on board. And Stephen Terrell uses those words, more regulation on board. So as my own system has become more flexible and have had more capacity to hold stuff, I've come more in touch with my own, frankly, terrifying childhood pain from some of the things that happened, and the despair that I felt at various times. So healing does not mean you're going to neaten up and be perfect. Healing means you have more capacity to hold more of your own emotional experience without going into a lot of dysregulation. So I really want you to know that you're not doing it wrong if you also are getting in touch with more pain and more horror, terror, despair, sadness, so much grief. There is so much grief for many of us to get in touch with. I often think that grief work is the main thing that we engage in when we're trying to heal from developmental and childhood and attachment trauma. And so we have to developing that relationship with ourselves to be with all of that and to tend gently to ourselves without criticizing ourselves is absolutely key. Because if you haven't if you've experienced emotional neglect and now when you go into therapy and you suddenly come into contact with a lot more emotion, it might feel like you're actually failing. And I want to suggest that you're absolutely not failing. You're not failing at all. It's that you're coming more into contact with trapped feeling states. I hope that you have a therapist who helps you titrate into this and to help you cultivate an understanding that you don't have to be completely immersed in all your historical stuff, that you learn the ability to touch into it and then to go away and to resource yourself, and to touch into it when you have more capacity and to go away and to resource yourself. Because when we are on a healing journey or in therapy, we don't want to decompensate or kind of dissolve into a puddle or like unravel, essentially. Whenever I talk to my own clients, I'm always kind of keen to explain to them that it's my job to facilitate not decompensate, like not spinning out basically, and not going into a period of extended collapse or not feeling like they're dissolving as a person. Because in therapy, that needs to be really titrated and really held gently, because we don't want to be flooded constantly, like emotionally flooded by our past. In complex trauma, one of the big things that happens is we have emotional flashbacks. And so we really wanted to be able to discern and give ourselves kind of mastery eventually over being stuck in a flashback and being able to come back into our present day and resource ourselves so that we're not totally dominated by our trauma, if that makes sense. And your therapist will help you with that. But if you notice yourself that you're in a place of really feeling like you're unraveling and you're having a lot of fear or anxiety, because those are signs that we're in our inner child a lot, I want you to really focus on cultivating joy, on focusing on the areas of your life that really are working, on focusing on how your coping strategies have really helped you survive to this point, and to get some professional help to help you deal with what feels like an unraveling. Because we all are allowed help. We all need emotional support and help. And that is certainly not a sign of weakness. I think actually asking for help is a sign of strength. So I want to give you some kind of signs that are positive signs and kind of helpful signs of making progress on your journey, so that you can really take like a strength-based approach to yourself and kind of look at really where you're doing really well. So many of us have spent so much time just criticizing ourselves and really focusing on the areas that don't work. We're kind of endlessly searching for how we can improve things that don't work, instead of refocusing our energy on what is working. And many of us have a nervous system that's patterned to look for the issues, the problems. So I notice that from a people-pleasing point of view, if I go into a situation and I perceive that people don't like me or they feel like I'm too much or something, those are the nervous systems that I'm attracted to, the ones who I perceive don't like me. And there's a nervous system sense of that. And I've really noticed that I don't have to do that. I can seek out those systems, those people who I don't get that sense from. I don't have to spend all my time trying to convert the people who don't like me. There's no point in that. But many of us have had to do that our whole lives because it's linked to our safety. But we can be safe now if people don't like us or find us too much. And we can let those people be. We can notice the response in our nervous system. We can notice what we are pulled to do, and we can soothe that. We don't need to get people to like us. We don't need people to approve of us. The most important thing here is that we love and approve of ourselves, and that we have mutually honoring and respectful relationships where there is reciprocity on a nervous system level, which you will always be able to pick up. You might not want to acknowledge it to yourself, but you will be able to pick it up. Okay, so let's talk about a few signs of being on a healing journey and sort of signs of progress. So if we consider that widening our window of tolerance is a really important thing, you will notice that some of the things in parenting will become less jarring as you widen that window of tolerance, as you incorporate more regulation into your system. You will spend less time being dysregulated. So you will have less things that send you either into hyper-arousal, so either into collapse or disconnection or dissociation or freeze, or into hyper-arousal, so into rage and anxiety and a lot of doing. Any trying less to control and manage others, more letting everyone manage their own lives. So that scenario I was just talking about, when you go into a group and you notice certain things, you don't need to control and manage everyone. I've noticed new layers of that for myself, where I'm like, okay, I can see that, I can notice that, I can see what it pulls on in me, and I can just be with that. I don't need to change it for myself. Less catastrophizing, I would suggest, is a sign of more regulation in your system and healing, where you don't make everything a disaster, or not everything is everything for me used to be a disaster, or it felt like a catastrophe if something's happened. And now I'm much more able to kind of roll with the punches of things, or whatever, roll with life, whatever that expression is. You'll notice you become less triggered. So we will likely always experience triggers, but they will impact you less. So they will like plummet you into a state of disconnection or shame or being in your inner child for a shorter amount of time. The length of time between them will be greater, will increase, and there'll be less of them, and the whole you will spend less time being triggered. So whereas maybe it might have taken you like 2 days or a week or 2 weeks, if something was really massive, now you might be able to come out of something in a day. And the depth to which you kind of collapse will also shift. And you'll be able to tend to yourself more easily and become more aware of, because often what happens when we get really triggered, we go into a place of dorsal, and in that place, everything feels like shit. Life just feels like a calamity, like a disaster, and we don't have any kind of hope or possibility down there. Everything just feels like we've made a massive mistake. And you will come to see, oh, okay, this is a place of dorsal. This is not the truth of my whole life. And you will be able to take action to help yourself move out of dorsal, because you recognize that it's dorsal. It's not that you're not that you're a terrible person who's got a terrible life. It's just that you've been triggered into this place. You'll have less anxiety as you become more regulated overall. So anxiety is really a feature of your nervous system. It's a feature of being in a sympathetic state, and you will have less time of being like, you'll have anxiety will be less intense, and it will be less prevalent. You'll have more of a sense of being able to cope, because there's always a sense that we need control in order to mitigate our anxiety. But really what we actually need is self-trust and a belief that we can cope. And as you are healing, that self-trust grows, where you can kind of not over-prepare and not control everything in defense against the anxiety. You can know, okay, life is unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen, and I will manage with what comes up. So you can hear that growing self-trust that will help mitigate the anxiety. You'll have less people-pleasing as you heal more. So you'll become more comfortable in the discomfort that arises when you're not pleasing people. And that's a double thing. That's what I mean. A double. It's a cognitive position where we have to kind of acknowledge that's going to happen, and we also have to tolerate the discomfort in our bodies. But that will become more familiar and easier, and less. You'll feel less compelled to act on those signals of, oh, I'm a terrible person because I'm not making them pleased. You'll be able to tolerate that and know that is not the truth. Less perfectionism. So I think that perfectionism is a really complex one, because it's like that creeper ivy. I was writing about this the other day. It's like perfectionism its suckers into everything, and it grows everywhere, and it can be very insidious. So you may have perfectionism still impacting you in various areas of your life, but even when you notice that, you'll be more gentle to yourself, and you might have a little laugh about it and be able to think, okay, well, no, that's okay. This was a survival strategy that I've had for a long time, and I can just lessen my grip a bit. And one of the most important things, I think, is that there'll be less self-criticism. So criticism and berating ourselves is a part of many of these coping strategies where we utilize this as a way to keep ourselves safe in childhood. Because the idea is if we criticize ourselves first, then we get less criticism because we've kind of done that to ourselves first. And when you can really, like when you notice that you're criticizing yourself, when you're being kinder to yourself with your words, more loving, that's just fantastic. I really, really wish that for you, that you can be less critical. And when you can be more with your own emotional messiness, that's a huge sign of healing and of growth, because we want you to grow into that caring adult, to care for all your parts. You can never go back and do your childhood. And obviously, I find sometimes that to be a great tragedy, that we don't have the ability to time travel. Maybe in time we will, and maybe, I don't know, maybe like, okay, I'm not going to go into some rabbit hole now, but we don't have that ability, and we have to be with our pain now. And in adult relationships, yes, some friendships or your adult love relationship, your partner and your friends may reparent your inner children at points, but really our inner community of children is our responsibility. We are the only ones who know what our inner children need. And that beautiful reparenting where you can tend to your terror, you can tend to your despair, and you lovingly with yourself. That is such a wonderful sign of healing. We're not trying to get rid of that stuff. We're trying to integrate it and be with all those feeling states, because you didn't get that chance first time around in childhood. And so now is your chance to be so loving, to really tend to yourself, to nurture yourself. Also on a healing journey, as you'll likely have less rage. So you'll learn to listen to your rage, and you won't shame yourself for it, and you will dissociate less from those times, because often what happens with rage is there's so much shame around it that we kind of split that off entirely. We split off the experience of being in a rage. And really what we need to do is also welcome and integrate that and learn from it, to channel our rage, not towards ourselves, but to channel our rage in the direction of the things that need to change. And so as you come more into communication with your rage, to learn from it, and you channel your energy in terms of getting your needs met, asking for support, noticing what drives your rage, you will notice that you have less rage. And that reparenting that I've been talking about is a crucial part of being with yourself as you develop a secure attachment to all your parts. So I hope that you can use the information to be really loving with yourself, and to know that actually welcoming in more emotional messiness, welcoming your humanity, that is such a wonderful part of healing. And not to kind of crush yourself into some sort of little shape that doesn't fit you, not to neaten yourself up. You're welcoming in your human messiness, and you're worthy. Even if you're emotionally messy, you're worthy and you're lovable, and that's what we want to teach all these parts. Okay, I'm sending you so much love, and if you can, please do leave a review, and we'll be back with more guests and more kind of psychoeducation about attachment and how you can facilitate for both yourself and your children. Okay, take really good care.